Hi everyone and welcome back to another lab. In this lab, we are going to learn how to perform essential configurations on Cisco routers. So these configurations include setting up IPv4 addresses against multiple interfaces. We are also going to introduce how to configure interface description. We are also going to enable CDP protocol. CDP stands for Cisco Discovery Protocol, and we're going to talk about the output of this command later on. We are also going to implement basic security measures such as creating local accounts and passwords. We are also going to enable SSH version 2, and we going to configure console as well as virtual terminal lines and setting up some banners. And we have two different types of the banners. We have the MOTD as well as the logging banner. We are going to talk about the difference between the banner MOTD versus banner login command. So the objectives of this lab is to configure a Cisco router with essential settings to ensure proper network operations and security. So we will go through various configurations where we are going to show the best practice and what Cisco recommends as well. So regarding our topology for this lab is rather simple, which consists of two routers, router 1 and router 2, and both are interconnected. So the interface that router 1 is connected to router 2 is gig Ethernet 001, whereas the interface that router 2 is connected to router 1 is via gig Ethernet 002. We will be using a couple of IPs from the RFC 1918, the Class B, and we will be using /30 to reserve network address space. So let's do the usual where we go through the lab tasks and then cover the configuration steps. Okay, so if I scroll a little bit down, we can see the list of tasks as usual. And the first task is obviously creating the actual lab, and we need to connect all the devices together. It's very simple. This topology is only a couple of routers and are connected with a single cable. So if we then move to step number 2, we are then need to connect to the CLI of each router, and we go to privilege exec mode and go to the configuration mode so that we are able to change the host name per device and according to the topology. We then move to step number 3, where we are going to configure IPv4 addresses on both interfaces, and we are going to enable interface description. We are going to enable Cisco Discovery as well as enabling the actual interface as well. We are then going to make sure that router 1 is able to ping router 2, and we are going to look at a command that will reveal the interface status, the MAC address, the network address, as well as the input and output counters, and a few attributes related to the physical interface. We then go to step number 5 and 6, where we are going to issue some global config, and we are going to explain the majority of them in more details when we go through it with you. And then if I scroll a little bit down, we're then going to go and configure console interface with certain attributes or properties, as you can see on the screen. Then we gonna look at some banners. We have two different types that we are going to discuss in this video. The first type is the message of the day, and the second one is the logging banner. We are then going to configure virtual terminal lines, and we are going to set certain attributes, much like what we are doing with the console. And then if I scroll down, move to step number 10, you can see that we are going to configure SSH version 2. We are then going to verify that you can SSH from router 2 to router 1 and vice versa. We're also going to check the CDP enable command, and we're going to observe the output that you get from the screen. We are then going to disable domain name systems lookup feature on the router, and we explain why you might need to do that. And then finally, once we checked everything in the box and we have covered all the configuration steps, then we can go ahead and save the configurations as the final step. Okay, so now we are ready to go ahead and jump into the configuration steps. It is your chance to pause the video and give it a go yourself. If you read the video description, you'll see that I included the lab objectives and the lab tasks, as well as the IPv4 address table. I also created a lab document for you to download so that you can challenge yourself by building the lab and go through the list of tasks on your own and whenever you want to. I also have included the lab setup ready to go for you to configure, and you will see that I included a couple of labs. The first one is pre-configuration and the second one is the post-configuration. So again, pause the video now or just keep watching. So what I would do next, I will actually scroll all the way up and then I will jump into the CLI of each router. So I'll just do that and do the same with router 2. Okay, so the first task is already been done, and we're going to move into task number 2, where we are going to change the host name of every device. So on router 1, I'm going to go say enable, and then from there I will say configure terminal, and then host name router 1. Do the same thing on router 2 CLI. Right, now the second task is complete. Now we move into the third task where we are going to configure the IPv4 on both interfaces, interface gig Ethernet 001 on router 1. So I'm going to say interface gig Ethernet 0/0/1. And we're going to start with setting the description by saying description. And then here we're going to say link to router 2. We're going to hit enter. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to say interface gig Ethernet 0/0/2, and we're going to say description link to router 1. So back to router 1, where we are going to set the IPv4 address by saying IP address 172.16.0.1. And the subnet mask is going to be /30, which means 255.255.255.252. And then we're also going to enable the CDP protocol. So you just issue the CDP enable command and hit enter. And then finally, we would need to enable the interface by saying no shot. We need to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to set the IPv4 address, which is 172.16.0.2. And the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.252. And we're also going to say CDP enable and no shot as well. So step number 3 is completed successfully. And now what we need to do, we need to make sure that both routers can reach each other. So we're going to say do. Since I am on the interface config mode, we would need to use the word do so that we are able to execute the ping command from that level. So I'm going to say do ping, and I'm going to say 172.16.0.1. And the first ping fails due to ARP request. And if I repeat the ping again, we get success rate 100%. So if I do the same thing on the other side, so by saying do ping 172.16.0.2, we get successful ping as well. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to use a command that provides valuable information for troubleshooting interface issues, checking configuration settings, and monitoring interface performance. This command is show interface and then the interface ID. And as I said, since we are on that level, we're going to say do show interface, and then we're going to specify the interface ID, gig Ethernet 002. Do the same thing on router 1. Do show interface Ethernet 0/0/1. So under the physical interface, we will find some valuable output that will help us troubleshoot if there are any issues with the router. And what you see on the screen here is the interface status. So this section shows the current status of the interface, including whether it is up or down and whether the line protocol is up or down. Below it, you can see the MAC address as well as the hardware that is being used. And then below that, you will find the link description or the interface description, exactly what we have configured. And then below that is the IP address and the subnet mask information. And then below that as well, you will find the MTU, which is the maximum transmission unit. This indicates that the maximum size of the data packets that can be transmitted over the interface without being fragmented. You also see the bandwidth and as well as the delay. And you will also find some additional information such as the reliability as well as the load. So these values indicates the load on the transmission as well as the receive queues of the interface respectively. And also you will be able to see that there is the link type, which is full duplex, the speed, and what is the media type. So in that case, there is like a GLC transceiver that is inserted into the interface. And then in that section, what you would see is the packet counts, statistics on the number of packets transmitted and received by the interface. So in this section, you will find it very valuable since it will give you some information about the CRC, for example. CRC stands for cyclic redundancy check errors. And you will be able to tell if there are any input or output drops or errors that occurs on the interface. All this information will be very helpful when you are doing some troubleshooting. Right, so if we then move to step number 5, where we're going to configure some attributes or some properties from the global config mode by starting with creating a password for exit mode. So what we're going to do, we're going to exit the interface level config. And then we're going to say enable password, and we're going to say Cisco 123. We'll do the same thing on router 2. We're going to say enable password Cisco 123. And then the second task is to enable CDP globally. And if you want to do that, it's so simple. You just need to say CDP run, and that will enable CDP on every interface. CDP run on router 2 as well. And then the step C is looking at the config, and let's try to see if you can read the password that we just created or not. So I will say do show run, and I'll stop at this point, and you can see here that the password, you can read it in the clear. Do the same thing on router 2, and we have the same command. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to log out from the CLI and try to log back in again. So I would say exit, and then hit enter to log back into the router. And then from there, we will try to go to the user exit mode. So we would say enable, and then this time it prompts with a password, and the password that we just created is Cisco 123. So we are back in user exit mode. The same thing happens on router 2. So I'm going to say exit, hit enter, enable, and set the password. Now that I'm back, I'll go to config terminal. And do the same thing on router 1. Now we are going to actually hop into step number 6, where we are going to create a secret password. And let's do some comparison between the enable password versus enable secret password. So we are going to say enable, and this time instead of using password, we're going to say the word secret. And here we are going to set the new password, which is IEE, all capital case 123. And I'm going to hit enter. Do the same thing on router 2. So I'm going to say enable secret IEE 1, 2, 3. Now let's go to step B, where we are going to check the running config. And you can see the difference between the enable password command and the enable secret command. So the enable secret command is considered more secure than the enable password command. When both are configured, the router will use the enable secret password for authentication effectively, overriding the enable password command. This is because the enable secret password is encrypted using a stronger encryption algorithm compared to the enable password, making it more resistant to unauthorized access. And because of that, even if both passwords are configured, only the enable secret password will be used for authentication purposes. So if I try to actually log out of the router and hit back and hit enter to log back in again and try to go to user exit mode and issue the Cisco 123 password, you can see that I'm unable to log in. And the only way to log in is by using the secret password, because that command overrides the enable password command. I'm going to go back to config terminal. Now at this point, we've managed to complete step C as well as step D as well as E. So now we are going to configure some local accounts. So the first local account is going to be IEE. So to do that, you would need to say user IEE and then set the password. If you set a question mark after the command, you will be able to see what are the options that you will be able to use. So one of the options here that we can use is specifying unencrypted password. So since we haven't encrypted the password, then I'm going to use 0. And then I'm going to set the password, which is IEE. And do the same thing on the other side by saying username, IEE, password 0, and then IEE. So we are also going to configure another account. I'm going to set that account with the highest privilege. And to do that, we would need to say username, admin, and we're going to say privilege, question mark that. You can see the highest level is actually 15. We question mark that. We can use the word password or we can use the secret option. So we can say secret, and we're going to also set the password, which is admin. Do the same thing on the other side. Username admin, and then privilege 15. And we're going to set the secret to admin as well. Next, we are going to tackle step number 7, where we're going to configure the console interface. So I'm going to say line console 0. And here we are going to set the exit timeout. This command is used to set the maximum amount of time a user session can remain inactive before it automatically terminates. This is particularly useful for managing console or telnet or SSH or any other remote sessions to Cisco devices. That will prevent users from having remaining idle indefinitely and tying up resources. So what we would need to say, exit timeout, and if you question mark that, according to the lab task, we would need to set the timer for 70 seconds. And we can do that either by setting 0 minute and 70 seconds, or we can set it by 1 minute and 10 seconds, which I'm going to do that on router 1. And on router 2, I'm going to do the same thing. Say client console 0, and I'm going to say exit timeout and 0 as 0 minute. And I'm going to set 70 seconds, which is 1 minute and 10 seconds effectively. And then what we are going to do next, we are going to issue the logging synchronous command. The logging synchronous command is used to prevent console messages from interrupting command entry. So by enabling it, it ensures that console messages are displayed on separate lines allowing users, you and me, to enter commands without being disturbed from the system log messages. So to do that, we would need to say logging synchronous. And we need to do the same thing on router 2. And then after this, what we are going to do next, we are going to enable the local authentication. And to do that, we would need to say login local. That command will allow users, when they are attempting to use the console interface, or they will have to use the local credentials that is being configured on the router. Do the same thing on the other side. So now we've managed to complete step C, and if we were to move to step D, we would need to actually log out of the router by saying exit, exit, and then I'm gonna hit exit as well. Now you can see that it's asking us to put our user credentials. And remember, we have created 2 accounts. The first account was IEE, which is a generic account, and the second account that we have configured is the admin account. And the admin account it has the highest privilege. In this case, I'm going to use the IEE account, and you will see the difference between them. So if I need, once I've logged in successfully, it goes straight into user access mode. And in here, I would have to put the enable password, or the enable secret, I should say. And now I'm back to my normal prompt. So I would go to config terminal, and I would do the same thing on router 2. As you can see, it already timed out after 70 seconds. And if I hit enter, you can see that the access verification has been prompted. So I would need to say admin this time. And I'm going to put the password. And in this case, you can see the difference between the admin account and the IE account. The admin account, it went straight into user exit mode, whereas the IE account, it went into user access mode. So with that being said, I'll just crack on with the next step. So step number 8, we are going to tackle banner configuration. So timed out, sorry, we'll need to go back. So in order for us to configure the banner MOTD, what we need to do is we need to issue the command banner, and then if you question mark that, you would have 2 options. The first one is the logging, and the second one is the MOTD. So the MOTD command is used to configure a message of the day banner. This banner is displayed to users when they access the device, typically through console or telnet or SSH or any other management interface. The MOTD banner is commonly used to display a warning or legal notice or other message to users before they log into the device. Whereas the banner logging command is used to configure a logging banner, similar to the message of the day banner configured with the banner MOTD command. The logging banner is displayed to users before they actually log into the device. However, the logging banner specifically appears right above the logging prompt, providing users with important information or warning before they authenticate. So we are going to tackle the MOTD first. Sorry, it timed out again. So I would have to go back. And then I would say paste. You can see that the banner MOTD, and then you have to include a delimiter, and then end it with a delimiter as well. So that is being configured on router 1. I would do the same thing on router 2. And then I'll paste the config. Next, I'm gonna configure the banner logging. So that is been done. Let's do that on router 2 as well. Now that is been done. And now let's tackle task number C. So again, we will need to exit. And if you hit enter, you can see that you get these 2 banners. So I'm gonna say admin, password admin. Do the same thing for router 2. Say admin, and the password is admin. Go back to config mode. And we have managed to complete task C. Now let's move into step number 9, where we are going to configure line VTY04. This command is used to enter the configuration mode for the virtual terminal VTY lines. These lines are used to remotely access the router via telnet or SSH. So the 0 and the 4 specifies the range of VTY lines being configured. In this case, from 0 all the way to 4. This allows you to configure setting for multiple concurrent remote connections to the router. So if I go back to my CLI, back to config mode, or it keeps actually timing out. And then what I would do, I would say line VTY 0 all the way to 4. Same thing on the other side so that it doesn't time out. And then the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to set the exit time out 1 minute and 10 seconds. And then I'm also going to say login local, and I'm going to enable the logging synchronous as well. Do the same thing on the other side, login local as well as logging synchronous. Next, what we would need to do is we need to use a command that will enable the router to listen to a particular protocol, to SSH or Telnet, for instance. And to do that, we would need to say transport input SSH. Without this command, you wouldn't be able to actually log into the router via SSH. So it is important command. So let's say transport input SSH. Now that we have configured the virtual terminal lines, what we can do, we can then go ahead and configure SSH version 2. So first of all, if you want to check what is the current version, you can say something like show IP SSH. You'll be able to see that SSH currently is disabled and the current version is version 1.9. So let's move into step number 10, where we're going to configure SSH version 2. So the first task that we need to do is we need to create a new domain. And to do this, we would need to say IP domain name IEE.local. Now we need to do the same thing here. IP domain name IEE.local. Next, we would need to actually generate RSA key with 1024 bits. So we're going to say crypto key generate RSA and then hit enter. And the default value is 512. We would need to configure it with 1024. So we're going to do that. Do the same thing on router 2. So we're going to say crypto key generate RSA 1024. Now let's move to step C, where we are going to enable SSH version 2. And to do this, we would need to say IP SSH version 2. Do the same thing on router 2. Next, we would need to verify that router 1 is able to reach router 2 and vice versa. So to do this, I'll just exit out of config mode. And I would say SSH -L admin, and then set the IP address, the management IP address, and hit enter. You can see that we've been prompted with an MOTD banner. So we would say Cisco, we need to set the password, which is admin. And now you can see the login banner has appeared as soon as we logged in. And you can see that the prompt has changed from router 1 to router 2. So we were successfully being able to SSH to router 2. So if I say show users, you will be able to see that my current session is using VTY0. And on the other side, if I say show users, you can see that my current session here is using the console interface. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to exit my SSH session, and now I'm back to router 1. Next, we are going to check the CDP command. So we're going to say show CDP neighbor, and I'm going to maximize the CLI display so that you can see the full output in one go. So what you see here is the capability codes. And on this section, you will be able to see a list of neighboring devices. So since we have only one device, it will only list one device. And you can see the neighbor device ID is router 2. And the local interface, this is the local interface of router 1. Sorry. What you see here is the local interface of router 1. And the capability of the router 2 is actually a router. So if you look at the capability codes here, it will tell you that R stands for router, whereas S stands for switch. And then it will tell you also the platform. So the current platform on router 2 is ISR 4300. And finally is the remote interface of that router. So where this router is connected to that router, this is the interface that is connected to. I'll look back to my session. And I'll do the same thing on router 2. Oh, sorry. Say show CDP neighbor, and let's just maximize the CLI display. And here again, you get the capability codes and the list of neighboring devices. At the moment, we got only one device, which is router 1, the local interface, which is Gig Ethernet 002, and the capability of that device is router. The platform is the same, ISR 4300, and the remote interface is Gig Ethernet 001. So next, what we are going to do, we're going to tackle step number 13, where we are going to disable IP domain lookup. So the no IP domain lookup command is used in Cisco IOS to disable the domain name system lookup feature on the router. When this command is configured, the router will no longer attempt to perform DNS resolution for invalid command entered at the command line interface. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I'm going to just walk you through a test here. So I'm going to say something like this. Now it will take some time to actually give me back the control of my CLI, because at the moment if I hit enter I get nothing. The CLI is completely frozen and I'm unable to actually escape. So to fix this issue, what I would need to do, I would need to go to configure terminal, and from there I would need to say no IP domain / lookup. At this point, if I mistype a command, for example, it will not freeze. It would rather give me an instant error. And as you can see, it just released the CLI now from router 2. So I'll do the same thing on router 2. So I'll go to configure terminal, and then I would say no IP domain lookup. So I have saved the configuration, and we have reached the end of the lab. That's it, folks, for this video. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our future tutorials and tech insights. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop a comment below. I read all your comments and I'm here to assist you. Remember, consistency and hands-on practice are key to success. Stay curious, stay inspired, and until next time, peace.